and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode, I'll be discussing the 2021 monumental Titan crossover movie, Godzilla Vs Kong, as directed by Wingard. So, this film brings together the two titled Titans from their own respective franchises in the so-called legendary Monarch Monsterverse, which started with the 2014 movie Godzilla, followed by the 2017 movie Kong, Skull Island, and most recently, the epic monster smackdown that was 2019's Godzilla, King of the Monsters, making this now the fourth movie in the franchise and the accumulation of an idea to set forth to bring us a spectacle of gigantic proportions, and of course a number of great creature features along the way. And indeed, what an absolute journey it has been. We have certainly been introduced to an absolutely wondrous new world, with some excitingly new ideas and some mouthwatering action, to say the least. And with Godzilla vs Kong, what a way to round it all off. This is indeed what I have been waiting for. And I went into this with that kind of giddy, exciting, that kiddie kind of exciting feeling. The only time that I've ever kind of really felt that was with 2019's Avengers Endgame. At the very start, therefore, I want to issue a disclaimer with this review. There is no way that I wasn't going to enjoy this film. Godzilla and Kong, they could have been basically spending 2 hours arguing over who has the TV remote and who would be either watching Bake Off or MasterChef. And in that, I would have still been riveted on my seat. So I will try and be as objective as I can, but I would certainly take that into consideration when you weigh up on what I can have to say about the movie. I mean, we have a giant gorilla going at it with a giant lizard. That's basically all that my brain was thinking about, But to mark this monumentous occasion, we kind of sat there and were divided into two teams. Oliver and Leslie put themselves squarely on Team Kong, so I found myself on Team Godzilla, but either way, I knew we were going to have an absolutely great time. And indeed, we did. This film delivered exactly what it said on the tin and met every single one of my expectations. I had kind of figured out the plot for the most part, based on the trailers and the hype surrounding the movie. I kind of couldn't really kind of move in the circles that I kind of move in now without catching a glimpse of a spoiler or two. But to be fair, that kind of really just revved up my excitement for what we were going to get. And again, it did not let me down. So, the movie examines something known as the hollow air theory, for those that don't know, which had kind of been tipped as kind of a critical part of this universe, kind of since Kong Skull Island, if you like. And with that kind of being that the Earth is in fact hollow and made up of giant caverns and tunnel systems through which the Titans kind of live and move. Kind of a whole new ecosystem within our own planet, with potentially kind of untold riches in the form of a new power source. So, going to try and keep this spoiler free, so there's not going to be too much, but a giant tech firm known as Apex Cybernetics persuades Monarch, the government agency responsible for keeping tabs on all of the Titans currently known to us, to kind of lead an expedition to this long-lost land with the aid of Kong, believing that he could lead them to it, basically using some kind of ancestral instinct. However, needless to say, Godzilla is a bit taken aback when Kong leaves Skull Island and reignites an ancient rivalry between their two species, resulting in a series of epic throwdowns. There can only be one Alpha Titan, and Kong bows to no one. And so I think, to be fair, that is all I really want to give away at this time. I don't do too many new film reviews, or I haven't done for a while. So I don't want to people still want to watch this. So that's about all you're going to get. But I mean, pretty much plot-wise, to give you a flavour of what's going on, that's about it. I mean, there's a couple of other juicy elements, don't get me wrong, to be had along the way. But yeah, exactly what it says on the tin. This is an epic battle between a giant lizard and a giant gorilla, if you like, a giant ape. Everything else has kind of become a little bit inconsequential at that point, you know? So, let's start by putting it bluntly. This is about epic battles between giant creatures. That's what I came for. That's what I got. And in that, the fight sequences that we had in this movie lived up to my expectations. And indeed, were quite, well, to be fair, they were actually quite brutal at points between the two. Now, one of the points that people were actually critical about with Godzilla King of the Monsters was just how kind of dark all the action was. You know, they kind of hid the CGI in the gloom of the film itself. And in this, I think, to be fair, the movie creators actually sit and listened. And indeed, the battles in this are nice and crisp. They were well lit and up close and personal. You know, they didn't hang around. This time around, we are there in that fight with some very clever camera angles and some kind of POV shots. We do even go kind of full-on neon as our two titans battle it out in Hong Kong, which is simply spectacular. A little surreal, perhaps, I think, but spectacular nonetheless. The detail that's kind of been presented is absolutely spot on for the most part. I mean, it's CGI, you know, you're going to get a little, but and both, you know, Godzilla and Kong, they are rendered to perfection. And like I said, there is a couple of times that I thought that the CGI was a little bit off, or we kind of lost the focus a little bit, but overall, you know, it was a solid attempt, I think. Touching on the use of colour, which this film does quite well towards kind of like the third act, if you like. One thing I must say is that when the kind of that movie does get into its full swing, it does kind of have like a Tron come Blade Runner vibe in approach to the movie's style. The visuals, the technology, and the music kind of all used to kind of add to this feeling, with us veering away from more of that creature feature in this one, kind of into the realms of more science fiction. There was definitely a distinct shift as the movie progressed. The music, as composed by Tom Holkenborg, did a fantastic work, I think, at bringing the two worlds together. As we're kind of introduced to both Godzilla and Kong, we have themes which I thought very much represented their own individual styles and kind of really did give an air of familiarity for both. From the start, you could really tell that you know, the essence of both franchises was in safe hands. But yes, as our kind of two titans came together, these themes did indeed change into kind of like a real kind of more colourful presentation, more kind of electronic and futuristic, if you will. From a human standpoint, do we really care? No, I'm being a bit too harsh, maybe a bit disingenuous. I think we got a selection of characters and an overall story that was better rounded than we actually got in Godzilla King of the Monsters. But their exploits and their adventures seem to be more of a convenience than they were to kind of move the plot forward. For most of the time, for those kind of connected to Godzilla's element of the story, we kind of had a portion of action, followed by Millie Bobby Brown investigates. Brown reprises her role as Madison Russell that she did in Godzilla King of the Monsters. To more action, then we get more Millie Bobby Brown investigates, and then kind of so on at nausea, you know? Which, alright, it was a bit intriguing, I must admit, but on some level it just felt a bit surplus and a bit contrived. A number of people in the movie, you really do wonder why they're there at all, I must admit. However, I must say that the characters which kind of revolved around Kong were more relatable, and indeed had more of an emotional story arc, especially with the involvement of a young girl, Jai, I think her name was, as played by Kaylee Hottle, who was orphaned from the Iowa tribe who lived on Skull Island with Kong. The use of kind of sign language with Kong and the connection that they had made it really made for a really heartwarming storyline and even a little bit of light-hearted humour, which was a really nice touch, I thought, indeed. Very much in keeping with the style kind of introduced for Kong on Skull Island. On the downside for me, yes, I am trying. I think the film was too short. Now, bear with me. I know what you're going to say. You know, I wanted more action. I wanted a longer film, which I did. I'm not going to lie. But personally, for me, I think I would have actually liked to have seen some of the elements introduced in this movie examined in more detail, with a lot more detail, if you know what I mean. Now, without spoiling anything for anybody, there's been something that's kind of been building up in the previous films. And it's one particular aspect of these movies that I felt in this ended up being way too rushed for my liking. I would have actually liked to have kind of had this part of the journey slowed down to be savoured. I was really excited and looking forward to having, you know, to have it be the spectacle that an adventure that it deserved. It could have done, I think, with a movie on its own. Without saying anything, it's to do with the Hollow Earth, but that's about, yeah. In this part, it did feel very rushed, and it tried to be too many things and cover a lot of ground all in one sitting. The battles are epic, you know, but it could have been so much more with respect to the opening of this universe right up, and that almost seemed like an afterthought, to be fair. The increase in technology as well, in the technological ability, it was a significant leap. Now, I enjoyed the sci-fi, don't get me wrong. It added a real kind of fantastic new slant to everything. But I do have to admit that considering we had not seen or touched on any of it in the previous movies, it did kind of feel a bit too much too soon. Again, required given the plot, but its existence convenient nonetheless. Overall, this film delivered what it set out to do. Absolutely. We got some epic battles between Godzilla and Kong. Everything else was really just garnish for me, you know? Some of which worked, not so much, but ultimately the film was stacked full of thrills and spills, you know, and some fantastic adventure, which ultimately thoroughly entertained. Now, for those that have followed the Monsterverse so far and enjoyed it, I think you will love this movie. On a scale, I think it's a significant improvement over Godzilla vs Kong, but not quite on the same level as Kong Skull Island. So it's kind of somewhere in the middle of them on like the stakes, if you like. It brings together two gigantic titans together for a phenomenal showdown for the ages, with some fantastic special effects, which really does get us up close and personal. Kind of with, you know, with these titans as they kind of duke it out with one another for ultimate supremacy. Doing justice, I think, for both of the franchises, whilst forging its own path with its kind of neon-infused distinctiveness. It does perhaps pack in a little bit far too much and try to cover too much ground for my liking overall, but you know, we kind of do sacrifice a lot of the story, I think, in that respect, which, in terms of the human element at least, does feel, once again, like most of the films in this series, kind of lacking in substance. But anyway, whatever your thoughts on it, one thing is for sure, either way, there is still lots more of this universe to explore, and certainly more potential for some epic creature features to be had and some great exploration adventure movies. So I hope this is not the end, you know? But what an end if it is. What an end. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, and other movie-related content. We've absolutely loved having you here at SciFirst MovieTalk. Definitely love to have you back. But yes, most of all, just thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.